My name is Jake Sullivan. Until 6 months ago, I was a software engineer in Silicon Valley who walked away after a big exit. I wanted quiet. I wanted a lake my grandfather bought in the 1950s. 50 acres of water and shore that our family had stewarded for 3 generations. My grandfather used to say, "Water is life." He fought to protect that watershed and taught me to treat it like something more than a commodity. So I renovated the cabin, moved in, and began living the slow mornings and quiet evenings I'd been craving. Then one morning I found a neon orange violation taped to my boat. The Maple Creek Estates HOA demanded I remove my boat within 48 hours or pay fines. And, get this, they threatened towing at my expense. I laughed at first. This was my grandfather's fishing boat. It had been on Sullivan Lake for decades. But the letter was real and signed by the HOA president, Richard Wilkins. And that's when I felt the temperature change, from amused to very, very interested. I started asking questions. Neighbor Ray Delgado, a retired carpenter who knew my grandfather, told me something I hadn't known. The HOA had been using my lake for years, hosting fishing tournaments and calling it their crown jewel. They'd been holding events on my eastern shore, setting up tents and even installing temporary docks, all without permission. Apparently, community water had become code for free lake for weekend riches. I called Emma Porter, an environmental lawyer and an old friend, and she said 3 words that made me sit up straight: trespassing, evidence, injunction. Her first instruction: don't respond to the HOA notice. Gather evidence, confirm the deed, put cameras up, document everything. So I did. I found the original deeds, surveyed maps showing the lake and the 15-foot perimeter, and installed high-resolution security cameras focused on the spots where the HOA held events. The more I dug, the more the pattern emerged. The HOA website proudly posted photos of their annual fishing derby right there on my property. There was even an Elite Anglers Club page boasting exclusive access. They'd been treating Sullivan Lake like their private amenity. I realized I was looking at a long-term effort to normalize control of the lake while the property sat mostly unused. Next step, the HOA meeting. I went in quietly as an observer. The HOA president, classic small-town dictator energy, announced new lake rules and complained about an unauthorized boat. When I asked who owned the lake, his answer was vague. He insisted the lake was under HOA management, but when I asked for the deed or legal basis, he visibly tightened up. That little reaction was the crack in their armor. I left more convinced than ever that the HOA had been bluffing. After the meeting, I met Gerald Thompson, president of the Elite Anglers, a man who offered me access to my own lake as if that were a favor. I thanked him politely and planned to use the upcoming tournament as a live test. Cameras, documentation, and legal backup. It felt like a little baiting a raccoon with a better raccoon trap, only this raccoon had a suit. The day before the tournament, Drickens drove up, smiling his country club smile and offering a simple agreement: recognize HOA management in exchange for keeping my boat. It was the classic pressure move: intimidate, then bribe. I told him I'd have my lawyer review it. He left, and within hours, my boat disappeared from the dock. A notice said it had been impounded for non-compliance and could be reclaimed for a fee. That crossed a line. This was theft, plain and simple. The sheriff told me HOAs and property disputes are often civil matters. Some deputies were reluctant to intervene. That's why Emma's legal strategy mattered so much: paperwork, camera footage, and timing. Emma arrived, confirmed my deeds were ironclad, and pulled county planning documents that explicitly excluded Sullivan Lake from the HOA's development. That was the smoking gun. Armed with deeds, surveys, and camera footage showing HOA members launching boats from my shore, Emma drafted a plan.
The tournament day was perfect for evidence. Trucks, tents, dozens of boats, all on my land. Investors arrived, portfolios in hand, scouting the eastern shore. We recorded conversations, watched investors and HOA leaders study glossy resort renderings, and heard language about finalizing control. It was clear they were pitching an expansion and treating my lake as negotiable. Imagine negotiating a resort and forgetting who actually owns the sand. That's bold. With the evidence compiled, Emma filed an emergency injunction with the county court, an immediate legal shield to stop unauthorized use. The judge reviewed the deeds, the survey, and our documented footage and granted the injunction. That meant we had temporary court-ordered protection. The gathering had to vacate, and trespassers would be asked to leave under enforcement. We moved with a sheriff's deputy. Emma presented the injunction, the deputy ordered the crowd to pack up, and chaos ensued. Boats were loaded, tents dismantled, and investors retreated. The elite anglers president was furious. The HOA president paled. The public drama drew a local reporter. Soon the story hit the front page in social media. HOAs don't love bad headlines. What followed was a cascade of resident outrage at being misled about lake access, a county probe in the HOA finances, and a lawsuit from development partners against Wilkins for misrepresentation. Emails surfaced suggesting he'd been negotiating access he didn't control. The HOA board crumbled, several members resigned, and Wilkins quietly left town. Local law enforcement increased patrols to prevent further trespass. The boat was returned with a grudging apology. But this was bigger than a boat. It became an opportunity to build something better. With community leaders and a retired judge stepping up, we formed the Sullivan Lake Conservation Trust. We created transparent rules, reasonable access permits, conservation-funded maintenance, and an inclusive angling club with environmental guidelines. The shady exclusive access model was gone. 2 weeks later, investigative reporting revealed Richard Wilkins had a history of similar schemes under a different name in another state. The county prosecutor reviewed evidence for fraud and misappropriation. The man who tried to claim my lake was exposed. Sometimes scammers pack a suitcase and forget their resume follows them. Months later, the lake is healthier and busier, but in the right way. A modest public park sits on the eastern shore. The Conservation Trust oversees stewardship, and anglers follow new rules that protect habitat and respect private ownership. I still take my grandfather's boat out on quiet mornings, coffee in hand, a ritual that feels like honoring a promise. This whole saga taught me a few hard lessons. Document everything. Know your deeds, gather evidence, and use the law strategically, not impulsively. If you're a landowner, or someone dealing with HOA overreach, these are practical takeaways. Verify titles and surveys. Record unauthorized use. Consult a lawyer who understands land and water rights, and consider involving local media or public officials when patterns of misrepresentation surface. And keep your boat chained if the HOA starts getting creative with impound notices. In the end, this wasn't just a victory over entitled HOA leadership. It became a lesson in stewardship and community building. We turned conflict into a structure that protects the lake and opens it responsibly. My grandfather's words rang true. Take care of the water, and the water takes care of you. If you enjoyed this story, and maybe learned a thing or two about rights, deeds, and standing your ground, please share it with someone who owns land or enjoys lakeside life. And to my one subscriber, thanks for sticking around. If you're not yet subscribed, consider joining us for more real stories about everyday justice, consumer rights, and how ordinary people win when they do the homework. Until next time, protect what's yours, document everything, and remember that a quiet life is worth defending. Thank you for listening.